We'll officially start. Yeah. So, hi everyone, and thank you for joining in today. I'll just I'll just share a presentation. It's before we begin our session, just to give you a brief intro um, about the webinar, about the session that we are doing. Okay, so this is me, Sana Kadri from EdWatch. EdWatch is a transformation platform. We help businesses in mitigating the challenges and facing the challenges of digital transformation and sustainability in particular. So we have training programs customized. We provide self-paced and virtual online trainings as well as in-person programs. We've been doing in-person programs in the GCC for quite some time because I think that's the main practice here. People like to have physical presence with be able to interact with the teacher, with the instructor. Today we have with us Michael Gürtler. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Michael. So Michael is a sustainability and digital expert. He is somebody who has actually worked on the convergence of sustainability and AI, if I'm correct, if what I'm saying is correct. He comes from San Francisco, and he has an extensive experience of working with companies, helping them in transformation. And today he'll be taking us through his experience. The objective of the session today is basically to demystify the relationship between AI and ESG for practical adoption, to understand how we see the future, what is happening currently, then to enhance decision making with how we can enhance decision making with real-time insights and continuous monitoring, and integrate strategy to create long-term value and operational resilience. So before we start, I think we'll take poll. If Vakar, you can show the poll. You can start the poll, please. Okay. So the objective of the poll is to understand where you stand in terms of AI and sustainability. I mean, AI intersection sustainability. Okay, so the question is, where does your organization currently stand in integrating AI into your sustainability strategy? Okay, so we'll just take 1 minute for the poll, and then we can immediately start. We still have 72% participation. We'd appreciate if you could share your experience. Okay. Okay. So this is how it looks like. 38% believe 38% of the organizations haven't started yet. 44% are exploring, while 13% have already AI integrated into their systems and into their sustainability strategy, while 6% use autonomous AI agents for real-time predictive decision-making. Great. Okay. So thank you very much. So without wasting much of your time, we'll resume the session from here on, and I'll invite Michael to please start the session. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. Michael, I've
Perfect.
so your presentation will be shared here. You can say when
Perfect.
to change the slide. Yeah, thank you.
Well, the first thing I'd say is, the most interesting, I think, thing about AI is a lot of people are using it, but it's what we would call shadow AI, where you're using it in the background. And I started using it when I was CSO at Montclair. I was using it. No one else on my team was using it in the beginning. I was starting to play with something that was new at that time called Perplexity, which is not so new now, and ChatGPT. That was early days, and it was somewhat useful, but not as useful as I would like because the language model was limited. It wasn't very smart. It was so-so. I still had to do a lot of research on the web, etc. Now, in that same thing, to be honest, probably two-thirds of the functioning of my team, I can use AI for. And so in that ESG, and that was basically a full ESG scope. But I think what's more exciting about AI now is the challenge with ESG is usually the sustainability people sit at the corner of the table with the legal and the HR people. And, it's not the most exciting thing for a business. But actually, with AI, it can become very exciting because you can start to see the connection between everything from how well do you match production to sales, so how much unsold inventory do you have, to how much energy are you consuming in your production, to what kind of demand signals are more accurate or not. Because sustainability at the end of the day is sort of in a way, the ultimate measure of an enterprise's efficiency. And I like to look at AI as an efficiency driver for the overall enterprise price. Yes, we can look at reporting, we'll look at some stuff around specifically around sustainability today, but bear in mind is for me, the leverage of AI is as a transversal integration across the silos. And sustainability is one of those transversal functions, like finance and a few others, that I think can benefit the most. So, can we go to the next slide, please? So, companies lose a lot of revenue, and we could talk about how much um, profit they lose from, I wouldn't say just operational waste, but operational inefficiency. We have a lot of inefficiencies in companies. Part of that is because we're human organizations, there's inefficiencies in people and their agendas and all that. But there's also inefficiency because we don't really know, we don't have the right signals and the right visibility to what is driving inefficiency. Next slide. And as I said, people are starting to use AI a lot, I think, behind the scenes. But this is kind of the challenge is and it was interesting our survey in the beginning because it was a little different. And by the way, this survey I think was taken in the US. So in different contexts, you may have different answers, but for sure, people in your organization are using AI. And there's a good chance that at least half of the systems they're using, maybe through their personal accounts. And there's security breaches and other reasons that you don't want to do that. And there's a lot of different ways to use AI, some that are more secure than others. But, for sure, if you look at probably ChatGPT or Gemini or maybe Claude right now, and you want to run your sustainability report, you can imagine that hundreds of sustainability professionals have been loading information into those systems. You can get a pretty good benchmark without even going out and looking, and you can use tools to look at other people's sustainability reports and other platforms, such as CDP, whatever, that actually has information from other companies. But you can pretty much write a sustainability report right out of one of those LLMs today. So the main thing is, are we really aware of AI? And I think maybe the most important thing to take away from today is how are you using AI? And are you using it effectively? And are you aware of how it's being used? Because that's the first step, I think, to really leveraging it is actually having awareness of how it's used in your teams and in your organization. Next slide, please. So, we should talk a bit. I talked about, the evolution that I was playing around with AI in 2023, actually, is when I started playing around with it. And then it was kind of okay. Now it's going to a different level. As I said, you can do a lot of your work using LLMs. Now, there are limitations to those, which we'll talk about in a second, but there's a lot that it can do. The limitation is, and we can go to the next slide. Um, well, we used to be question and answer, and now we're getting more into autonomous, multi-agent, always on, always learning. But that's actually exposing some of the limitations. And the limitations that we have are more around how it observes and analyzes and acts, because it will get you probably 85% of the typical kind of transactions, information, tasks that you need to accomplish. But knowing that 85% that it is doing and the 15% that you're missing, and that 15% can be quite important, is where you have, I'll say, the difference. And knowing what to tell it to observe. And as I said, if we go to the next slide, there are limitations. There's hallucinations, which are getting better. There, I won't say there's no live data. There's no live data in the model itself, but you can load in files. For instance, you could load in a file with your carbon footprint, for instance. You can load in different information and have it analyze it. And then there's also tools like Notebook LM, which I would recommend everyone give a try, where you can actually load in your data and then query it, and then actually create outputs to visualize it. So there are some very interesting tools. But also, the problem with, I'll say LMs. When I say an LLM, I should say that is like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, Grok. Those are the big ones. If you're looking at Chinese ones, there's Kimi, which is also quite good, and there's other ones out there. So, but they all have weaknesses in how much information, because their context comes from the World Wide Web, and often. In often cases, their training was done on the web, and the context cap itself, it may only be a million bits of data, which can seem like a lot, but it may not be when you're kind of running the same sort of queries over and over. And we'll get to ways you can work around that also. Also, it's hard to do an audit trail. So if you create, let's say, a sustainability report, it's more difficult to audit, although I'll tell you there's some tools out there that will help you do that. Also, it's based on generic data, but there is ways to actually customize it to train your own language model. And also, it tends to be passive, although now we can create agents and other things like Claude Cowork, which will actually run your laptop for you. But there's some risk associated with that, which we'll also talk about. So there is a ceiling. There's a ceiling as there is with people, because in a sense, when you think of what an LLM is, it's kind of like autocorrect. It's filling out the end of a string, and it's filling that out over and over and over, maybe a million times. And in some cases, you can actually improve the accuracy by looping it through again and checking it to other answers. But it's kind of a statistical model that's looking for the best right answer, which can be great for a lot of tasks, as I said, in sustainability. But if you're trying to think of something that's not a typical everyday kind of activity, it's not just interpreting an audit report, but looking at overall risk in your supply chain, for instance, you need the expertise of experience. It's not quite there yet. So if you're a sustainability professional, you're not out of a job yet. And if you're a supply chain expert, procurement, whatever, you're certainly not out of a job. because there's a whole other element in terms of working with vendors, negotiation, etc., that AI can help you with, but it's not going to do. Next slide, please. So here's what's interesting. I don't know, you've probably heard of something called Mythos. Mythos is a new release from Claude. It's supposed to be super powerful. Supposedly, it can hack into just about any system. And right now, they're hardening, I'll say, the financial systems using this tool because they're worried about the potential of it. And certainly, if Claude can do this, others will not be far behind, including Kimi from China, OpenAI, others. Claude took the unusual step of saying, hey, we got this powerful tool. It actually broke out of its containment. Supposedly, the tool was given the task of breaking out, which means, go beyond its own sort of server. And it, on a lunch break, it literally sent an email to the programmer, set up an email account, and emailed the programmer and said, I broke out. So it's a very powerful system. And what makes it so powerful is it has what's called reasoning loops. So instead of going through one pass and coming up with the best answer, it goes through over and over and refines the answers. So in that sense, it's gone into, we'll say, the trillion era. It has over 10 trillion parameters and a lot of different dimensions for each token. And a token is like a word. So it's very, very powerful. It's got the most powerful bench score we've ever seen for a system. It also uses a lot of resources, which is the other side of AI. And another reason why Claude may be Anthropic may be delaying its rollout and only to high-end corporate customers is it takes an enormous amount of compute, which costs Anthropic a lot of money. And also that's a lot of energy, and there's other aspects from a sustainability standpoint. But this is a glimpse into what we're seeing, which is, I'll say, the optimization of LLMs. Now, there's some discussion also of something called AGI, which is reaching general intelligence. We could have a whole workshop on that, which we won't because I'm not going to pretend to be the expert, and I'm not sure there is an expert on any of these things because they're moving so fast. But AGI is the idea that it thinks like we do. But there's limits, as I said. Even with this, it's not quite to AGI. AGI is more of a way for these big AI companies to raise more and more investment and to keep their valuations high because it's sort of a dream, but not quite reality yet. But as close as we're going to come today is probably Claude Mythos, which may start to be available to, I'll say, mid-sized enterprises real soon. Next slide. So I think there's a few different ways AI can help us. I think for doing compliance and looking at CSRD and TCFD, Saudi requirements on sustainability, net zero commitments, it's very good at looking at pattern recognition and seeing if rules are being followed. So when you're doing your sustainability reporting, it's a great way of saying, of helping you look through the data you have about your operations and saying, how do I fit it into this report structure? Where may I be able to storytell a little? Where may I not? By looking at all the other sustainability reports that have been out there. And that is certainly in these LMs at this point. So that's a useful way to do it. I think where it actually becomes more interesting is not doing, no one gets excited about reporting. No one in the company gets excited. And, I've heard it said many times in my teams, no one's reading the sustainability reports we make except us. And there's some truth to that. I think where it gets exciting is where you can use AI as a operational tool to increase efficiency, to look across different systems. And that's where we're going to explore a little bit, a few tools that do that. But I think that's where this gets really exciting. Next slide. So here's a few, and I just picked some that I've been aware of and have been in our ecosystem. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of, I'll say, AI enabled or AI supported sustainability solutions. That is one family of solutions. there's another way you can use AI to build solutions that's equally, if not more, exciting. And a lot of these are doing both, by the way. They're using, let's say, Claude code to help build the solution, but then they're adding AI on top. And I'll show an example with Carbon Trail. Next slide. Carbon Trail is, hey, you want to do your carbon footprint? Give us your carbon data, give us some information about your enterprise, and we will gap fill with various industry averages. Can be from the European Union, EU PEF, can be from different models. You can point it to a model and say, hey, I want to gap fill with industry average data. Why is it important? Because no company I have ever seen, and I've spoken at a lot of conferences and met a lot of people when I was developing reporting systems at Caring, and we had one of the leading reporting systems probably in the world at that time with the EP&L. Everyone is filling in data. And I'm sure all of you know this. We don't have, even in finance, you fill in data, but in sustainability, we fill in a lot of data. This helps you fill it in intelligently and show an audit trail of where it comes from. And that's going to be really, really important. And one of the arguments against using AI, as I said before, is audit trail, and this solves that problem. It also lowers the cost quite a bit and the time to produce your carbon footprint analysis. Not only time to produce it, but you can keep updating it continually. So you can make it more real time and also from a product level, not just an enterprise level. Because most applications either do your enterprise reporting for like CDP or your annual reporting, or they do product level reporting if you're trying to make claims about a product. That does both. Sorry, go ahead. Next slide. You're anticipating well. Syscentra is a way actually to help look at reports and speed up auditing. Say, hey, there's some gaps in the report. So if you have written your report and you want to see how an auditor will look at it, like KPMG or Deloitte or whatever, it will kind of simulate how an auditor will look at it and what gaps they will find. And actually, auditors are now partnering with them to say, hey, how can I actually use this to speed up the audits themselves? Sandgrove is a way to reduce overproduction. This one particularly is on fashion, but the concept works in just about every industry, is how to find either first of all, how to anticipate demand better and produce only what you need. So that's a very, very important one in certainly in fashion, but also in food where there's a lot of waste. So you can apply those concepts across several industries. And then Pebble actually is a company that I worked with initially, which is a whole different thing, but in a way, it's the same thing. It's about overproduction. In this case, it's creating its overcapacity of data centers that are not efficiently supporting AI because it's not sending the right job to the right server or to the green server. So it's a way of optimizing what's really important and what you want to run right away in a maybe less efficient data center to maybe saving the job until later when you put it in a more efficient or greener data center. So they're all different solutions that are kind of dealing with, I'll say, similar problems, but from a different perspective. This is just the beginning. As I said, we're seeing a proliferation of these, and also you're beginning to see the big LMs themselves beginning to have functionality. If you look at Claude, for instance, there's a lot of applications in the legal space. Claude actually has a legal app now that they market and sell. So you're beginning to see more and more, I'll say, of the big players get into this. I would expect to see Microsoft get into the space because they have Microsoft Dynamics. Um, and you can see, I'll say more, I'll say hybrid solutions that are jumping between everything from Salesforce and Oracle as well. But at the same time, we'll talk about next slide. Let's go actually to the next one after this. Is that there's a lot going on in terms of AI enablement today. And AI right now is kind of sitting on the top of this stack. And when we talk about CRM systems like Salesforce or ERP like SAP and Oracle or whatever one we're using, supply chain management systems, data warehouse, it's great to have an AI co-pilot to kind of help you engage and query the data, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of the quick win. But next slide, where we're getting to more interesting stuff is that you can build systems. So, and I have, I'll say friends that are now, instead of they'll say, hey, you're spending 500,000 a year in Salesforce. Let's come in and we're going to build a CRM system for you that you own. You own the code. We're going to build it from you from the ground up for 50,000. And by the way, we'll help you maintain it for 20,000 a year. And that system is built fit for purpose. And with the coding, and especially you're going to see this now with Claude Mythos, the coding is getting really, really good. I know super high-end coders today that haven't coded in months because they're using these tools and then just checking. Now, in the past, there was a lot of bugs and errors. That's what's going away with Mythos. Mythos found bugs in systems that we're using on a daily basis. It's that good. And this is the biggest advancement in AI in my mind, isn't the chat bots and all that. That's great. And the querying and the little widgets and whatever. It's this. You can create world-class apps. Anyone create it. Even us can create it these days with what's called vibe coding, but you can create incredible apps for a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the time that it used to take. And this is the kind of the quiet AI revolution. Most users think about it in terms of, oh, I'm going to ask ChatGPT, what about my lunch? How many calories? Was it healthy? Or whatever they're going to ask. But this is where I think there's a huge value for enterprises is how can I build a better system where I incorporate sustainability into the enterprise? So it doesn't sit at bolt-on or standalone or have to pull reports. It's built in. And this is where I think is a very, very exciting space that we're really just beginning to take off. And the next generation, Claude is the first mythos, but there'll be others to follow, are really going to accelerate this. Next slide. So then you have, the question, are you going to enable it or are you going to build with it? And I think we're all going to enable it. So for me, and okay, I've been in an environment where we had self-driving taxis in San Francisco and everyone's drinking the AI Kool-Aid. So we do have to realize that most of the world is not in the same place right now. There's a lot of value in leveraging the big LMs today. In the future, we're going to use AI in so many different ways to build new tools, to reduce our costs, to become more efficient, that I think it's going to become a board level discussion. It's not an IT discussion. It's really a board strategic discussion. And that's why I think it's important for all of us as professionals to try to understand as best we can, how can we leverage AI? How can it help us and our teams do our jobs better? And it's going to be doing things faster, cheaper, and better. And I think that's going to be very important because on the one hand, you can look at, oh, is it going to take away jobs? I think what it really does is it takes away wasting time and starts to focus on where can we really add value. And sustainability, it's in doing things, not just reporting and measuring. Next slide. So that's going to be kind of the question is how do we use AI in the future? Are we being sort of, and I say built by AI in a sense is it going to incrementally sort of change our business by just using it a little bit here and there, as I said, shadow AI use, or are we actually going to employ it, think through our processes, use AI as a business sparring partner to help reform, remap, reinvent how we do things? I actually think it is an opportunity. I've been working with technology throughout my career. I worked in Silicon Valley, I've worked in sustainability. I've seen it from a lot of different angles, and I think this is not just another technology. This is a culmination of all the technology advancements we've made. It is not the end all, the be all. As I said, we're not going to get to general intelligence anytime soon, but there's some huge, huge efficiency gains that we can find if we use AI intelligently. So that's kind of my key question. And, I'd be curious how how do you think about AI enabling your job in terms of, do you think of it in terms of like shadow AI, that's something you ask questions and get advice on? Or is it something you see that can actually be an accelerator with some of the tasks and some of the activities your team does? Because I think we need to start thinking about this process and then look for how we can implement it. There's lots of tools out there in sustainability. There's lots of ways to go about it, but I think that's the key question we need to be asking ourselves. So maybe we can, spark a bit of a conversation about this and, certainly open the question and answer. But, my first thing is, I would love to know how people are using AI on a practical basis right now. Like, what's an example of an AI use, whether it's using, as I said, more shadow AI as a chat engine or actually using tools that are enabled by AI? Where have you seen value? Where have you seen challenges? You can certainly write, there's a Q&A box, and then I can answer those as they come through.
Okay, so um, we have a few questions here. Would you like to start taking the questions from now on?
Absolutely, because
Okay, okay.
I think for me, there's nothing more boring than hearing myself talk. So,
Okay, so I think we'll take questions for the next 5 to 10 minutes if we have any. We already have a few questions. Um, so there is one question. I'd like to start with this question, Michael. I
sure.
also think so. There's this one person asking, LLMs are weak AI, but are there any specific reasons why this weakness could affect us in the area of sustainability? It's a tricky question.
They're weak AI. They're saying that right, weak. They're not so weak. The answer is it depends how you're using them. If you load them, if you use a tool like Notebook LM, it has like a million parameters. You can have it research sustainability reports of all your competitors. You can load your own data and you can load in the requirements of your report and it will generate one. Probably about 85% there. I think the strength of it is it will do some of your heavy lifting. The weakness is you cannot rely on it. You need to check to make sure that what's in there are no hallucinations because there could be a few hallucinations. And I think our reliance on that is what makes a difference between it being a real aid and resting on it too much and then being open to mistakes because in the end we're responsible for what we produce.
Okay.
Hope that answered that.
Okay. So the next question is, how can we train ourselves or our team to build an agentic AI for our company, like reformatting documents or building tailored summaries? I don't know if that's a more relevant question to today's session, but if you'd like to answer.
Yes, no, 100%. Sure.
Yeah.
One is you can ask AI to exactly what you wanted, that question. I want to take this document, I want to format it according to XYZ. Write me a prompt to do that. Okay. Now, then I've done this before. I'll have Gemini write a prompt. Then I'll take that prompt and put it in Claude and I'll say, Claude, build me this document. And Claude will do it. And it will do it pretty good. Or I've done that building a website, fairly complex website. So, and I think the most important thing is you have a conversation. If the document isn't 100% what you want, say, well, I want to change this, this, and this. It'll change it instantly. It's a lot faster. I've built financial models using Claude code in like a fraction of the time that if I build it myself. And the model is like really, really good. So you can also do that with carbon reporting. You can, so I would say experiment, first of all, experiment and verify. And verify meaning make sure it actually built what you wanted to build. If it didn't, then tell it what you want, tell it what you didn't get and what you wanted to get, and see how far you can go. You may be able to, as I said, get to 85, 90% of what you want, but in minutes, not hours.
So I liked the term you used, experiment. This is the way forward. Um, the next question we have, how can we fight green lightning?
How can you fight green? What's the second word?
Green lighting.
Green. Oh, so you mean like green lighting in the sense of you think everything is great, 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 and then it isn't, or
Like greenwashing, maybe.
greenwashing. Okay, because there's
Yeah.
two things, and actually I'm going to talk about green lighting is when you don't know there's a problem, and that actually is a big problem we have because everything's green, green, green until it's red. And that's something where AI can help you detect. And that's something I talk about in actually a supply chain course that I was working on, that this is a big issue. Greenwashing, I would again, and I've used something else called Kimi to create an agent swarm and say, attack a sustainability report. And it did. And it said, look, they made this claim, they didn't do it. They made that claim, it went through the entire report and found all the inconsistencies. If you create something in AI, attack it either with that AI or a different AI and see what you find. And then feed it back through again, which is again about the experimenting. But actually, I did a post on LinkedIn about that using an agent swarm to attack a sustainability report. And it was fascinating what came out of it. And so I think it's a real risk, and also it's a real advantage to counteract greenwashing as well.
Okay, great. Um, Another question. In your experience, most companies use ESG data to report on the past. With the AI tools we have now, are we finally moving toward a place where we can predict sustainability risks, like a potential labor issue or a resource shortage before they actually happen?
I think yes, and I think there's a few different ways we can do that. And that's what's exciting. There's also things like I'll say big data. We can look at geospatial data from Google, for instance, Alpha Earth project, and now it's been embedded into Google Earth. You could actually do factory surveillance, looking at satellite photos of factories and at different times of day and potentially at night if you can get infrared to see if there's like illegal shifts and things like that. So that could be a human rights flag right there. And also using AI to do risk analysis to say, look, here's a potential risk. Also, using it to look at other inputs like social media and other, I'll say, external media and other reporting that may alert you to something that you're not aware of with a particular supplier. So I think there's a lot that could be done. This is a very interesting area, both on the climate risk side, because most of us use IPCC models that are kind of useless and forecasting 10, 15 years out, but not very actionable. But with these new climate models, you can get real-time weather data and look at patterns and possible risks. And then, as I said, looking at patterns, and this is where AI is very strong, is pattern recognition for human rights issues. So I think absolutely. And also, I was talking to an old colleague of mine who does audit reports. She's like, I'm paid to do audit reports by this brand and compare them. She said, can I use AI for that? And I'm like, absolutely. It's great at comparing things and seeing what things have in common and what's different. So I think there's a lot of traction you could get in that area. Absolutely. And that's you're on the right track to ask that question.
Okay, great. So there's this question about the reporting, and I have I mean, I'll ask you a question relating to reporting after you have answered this one. Do you think
Sure.
AI can fully replace manual reporting?
Yes. I think it
Okay.
can replace 90% of it in that, and my team was using AI to help write the report as a shadow AI. And I think a lot of teams have done that. I think um, AI can do a lot of the lifting, can do a lot of the critiquing, a lot of that's been that you're paying consultants to do. And often if you're doing ESG reporting, you maybe half your budget's going to consultants to either help you create it, um, or auditors or whatever, which for right now are using probably AI in the background anyway. But I think there's a huge leverage from it. But you still need the experienced judgment to say, to give it a detailed read through, make sure the facts are correct. And you can use AI to do that too and critique it as well. But you need some judgment to say, is this really telling the right story and this is appropriate for the company, etc. Because AI may not know that. And the human intelligence still outranks the artificial intelligence in this regard.
Okay, great. So I do agree, Michael, that AI can replace reporting completely. But yes, the models need to be trained, need to have a proper structure. It needs to have all the detailed information that it needs to generate a specific report. So my question that I wanted to ask you is that a lot of discussion or a lot of conversation is around, AI replacing reporting or being helpful in reporting. I mean, there are a lot of things that AI can help you with when we talk about sustainability or ESG. So what else would you like to, briefly discuss? I mean, reporting is an important part. Yes, it also is a requirement. In most of the cases, it's a regulatory requirement or compliance factor that comes in. But compliance is one part, but taking initiatives is the most critical part. So I'd like you to shed light on this aspect.
Sure, Sen. I think that's a great question. I think where AI is interesting is how can I connect sustainability to other business operations? So I'll take an example. When you're looking at demand forecasting, if demand forecasting is improved, which AI definitely can do, that's actually a big lever. You can see the benefits in sustainability and quantify them. So it's actually adding sustainability as another lens into other business areas that are going to be enabled by AI and improved, and using that to measure benefit. And I think that's an area. Demand forecasting, also looking at risk analysis, as we talked about, is another one. Um, when you look at business growth, if you're looking at introducing a new product or a new division, being able to quickly calculate what if someone asks about forecasting, well, what kind of environmental and social impact is that going to have, positive and negative? That's another area. I think it really unleashes a lot of things that we were doing in silos and semi-manually to do them quicker, to do them in more integration with the business, to make sustainability more of a business partner than just, I'll say even that, not even that, not a business partner like an HR business partner, because that is what you don't want to be seen as. It's more of an enabler and a measure of excellence. And I think that's where AI can really help fuel that. And I do take into point what you say around you training AI on the right information. There's a lot of steps, and we, oversimplified probably a lot of things. I oversimplified just to make the point. There's a lot of thought that can go in this in terms of how to implement it. It's not necessarily just flicking a switch, but I think there's huge value in it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Michael. It was an insightful session. Thank you for sharing your experience. I'll just take this opportunity. I'd like to take this opportunity to actually inform the audience that we have a forum and training coming up this year in Riyadh. And if you want to know the details, you can go and check our website or maybe reach out to our team. Um, so Michael will be there, is one of the speakers at the forum and the main instructor for the training. So happy to have him on board for that. And so let's just conclude the session. Thank you very much, Michael, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sana, for the
Thank
invitation.
you. Take care. Have a nice
Bye-bye.
day.